I've always been the kind of guy who loves the roar of an engine, the smell of gasoline, and the feel of a classic car beneath my hands. My name is Michael, and at 38, I've managed to carve out a life that looks pretty perfect from the outside. I work as a software engineer, a job that pays well but doesn't fuel my passion like my collection of vintage cars does. Living in a quaint suburban home, life seems almost too good to be true. My wife, Sarah, is a marketing executive, sharp and driven. Her ambition as fiery as the red lipstick she wears. We've been together for over a decade now, and while our relationship has its moments, it's the kind of partnership that's built to last. Our kids, Lily, who's just turned 7, and Jake, who's 5, fill our home with laughter and chaos. Lily, with her wild curls and endless questions, and Jake, always trying to keep up with his sister, make every day an adventure. But here's the thing about perfection. It's often just a mask for the complexities lying beneath. My love for classic. Cars isn't just about the thrill of the drive. It's an escape, a way to disconnect from the pressures of work, the expectations of family life, and, well, let's just say, the occasional spicy moment that Sarah and I share, which we keep strictly between us, if you catch my drift. As I sit in my garage, the scent of oil and metal in the air, I can't help but reflect on how my life, while seemingly idyllic, has layers of depth and secrets, much like the cars I restore. Each car I restored had a story, and the next morning, I acted as if nothing had changed. I kissed Sarah goodbye, her lips leaving a trace of that fiery red lipstick on my cheek, a mark of our usual routine. I made breakfast for the kids, the smell of pancakes filling the kitchen, a comforting scent that usually brought a sense of normalcy. But today, my mind was elsewhere, clouded with doubts and suspicions. I went to work, but my thoughts were not on the code I was supposed to be writing. Instead, I noticed things I hadn't before. Sarah had become more secretive with her phone, often turning it face down or stepping out of the room to take calls. Her sister, Evelyn, had been visiting more frequently, their conversations hushed and urgent. And then there was the matter of our house. Sarah's sudden push to transfer the deed into her name alone felt like a cold hand gripping my heart. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off, that the life I thought was perfect was unraveling at the seams. So, I began to document everything. I installed a discreet recording device in the kitchen where Sarah and Evelyn often talked. The device was small, hidden behind a row of cookbooks, its red light blinking like a silent witness to whatever secrets might unfold. I also started keeping a detailed journal. Every interaction, every odd behavior, I noted it all down. My trust was shattered, but I needed proof, not just suspicion. I needed to know if my fears were justified or if they were just the paranoid thoughts of a man whose life was too good to be true. As I sat at my desk, pretending to work, my mind replayed the moments of the morning. Sarah's distracted kiss lingered in my mind. Weeks passed, and my collection of evidence grew. One night, while reviewing the recordings, I heard it clearly. Sarah and Evelyn discussing how to manipulate me into signing over the house, then orchestrating a scenario where I would leave or be forced out. They laughed about how easy it would be to make me look unstable, to paint me as the villain in our story. The shock was palpable. Here was my wife, the woman I loved, plotting not just to take our home but to destroy my life. I felt a mix of betrayal, anger, and a cold determination. I contacted a lawyer, a friend from college named Alex, who advised me on how to proceed legally. I couldn't confront them yet, not without a solid plan. The betrayal was like a physical blow, but I knew I had to keep my composure. I needed to gather more evidence to understand the full scope of their plan. In the days that followed, I became more observant, more strategic. I noted every secretive phone call, every whispered conversation. I watched as Sarah's demeanor changed. Her affection now seemed calculated, her smiles less genuine. One evening, as I was working late in my office, I heard Sarah and Evelyn again. This time, their voices were clearer, their words more damning. They discussed how they would use my love for my cars against me, suggesting that my obsession was a sign of instability. They planned to stage an incident, something that would make me appear reckless, perhaps even dangerous. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. They were not just after the house. They wanted to strip me of everything: my reputation, my sanity, my children. The thought of Lily and Jake being manipulated into thinking their father was the bad guy was unbearable. I decided then I would not play the victim. I would not let them dictate the narrative of my life. With Alex's guidance, I began to set up a counter-strategy. I would document their every move, every slip-up. I would be the one to expose their deceit. But the question lingered. Would I confront them, or would I wait for the perfect moment to strike back? Each day, the tension grew, the stakes. The day of the court hearing arrived, and the tension was palpable. I walked into the courtroom, my heart pounding like the pistons of my favorite engine. Sarah thought she was there to finalize the house transfer, but unbeknownst to her, I had filed for divorce and had all the evidence ready to present. She sat confidently beside her mother, unaware of the storm brewing. As the judge called the session to order, I stood up, my lawyer by my side. The air was thick with anticipation, and every eye in the room was on me. I handed over the recordings, the journal, and all the evidence I had meticulously gathered. The judge listened intently as the recordings played, the room silent except for the damning words of Sarah and Evelyn. The first recording played, and Sarah's voice echoed through the courtroom, discussing how to manipulate me into signing over the house. Her laughter, once sweet, now sounded like the cruel cackle of betrayal. The judge's expression remained impassive, but I could see the slight furrow in his brow, a sign he was taking this seriously. Next came the conversation where they plotted to make me look unstable, using my passion for cars against me. "He's so obsessed with those old clunkers," Sarah had said, her voice dripping with disdain. "We'll make it look like he's losing his grip on reality." The room was still, the weight of their words hanging heavy. I glanced at Sarah. Her face had lost its color, her confidence draining away with each word played. Evelyn, sitting beside her, looked like she wanted to bolt from the room. Then, the most damning evidence of all, their plan to stage an incident to make me appear reckless, perhaps even dangerous. "We'll make sure he's seen as a threat," Evelyn's voice suggested, cold and calculating. The judge paused the recording, his gaze shifting between Sarah, Evelyn, and me. "This is quite serious," he said, his voice calm but firm. "These recordings suggest a deliberate attempt to undermine Mr. Michael's character and stability." Sarah's eyes met mine, and for a moment, I saw the woman I had loved, the one The judge's decision was swift and unforgiving. He ruled in my favor, citing the clear intent to defraud and manipulate. Sarah was left with nothing from the house, and I was awarded full custody of our children. The look on Sarah's face was one of utter disbelief, her plans crumbling before her eyes. As we left the courtroom, my phone began to vibrate incessantly. I glanced at it to see 26 missed calls from Sarah. The weight of the day's events hung heavy on me, but a sense of justice prevailed. I stood outside the courthouse, the cool air doing little to calm the storm inside me. There is no explicit typo here, but the sentence could be split for clarity. Sarah's calls were relentless, each one a reminder of the betrayal I had just exposed. I felt a mix of relief and sadness. The life we had built together was now just a memory tainted by deceit. I decided to let her stew in the consequences of her actions. Answering her calls would only fuel her anger or perhaps her desperation, and I wasn't ready for either. Instead, I turned my attention to Lily and Jake, who were waiting with my parents. Their innocent faces, unaware of the courtroom drama, brought a bittersweet smile to my face. I hugged them tightly, feeling the warmth of their small bodies against mine. "Let's go home," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. Home, now just ours, would be a sanctuary, a place to heal and rebuild. As we drove away, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had led us here. The betrayal, the secret recordings, the courtroom revelations. It was like living in a twisted movie where the plot had taken a dark turn. But now, the narrative was shifting. I was no longer the unsuspecting husband, but a father determined to protect his children. The drive was quiet, the only sound the hum of the car's engine, a sound that usually brought me peace. Today, it was a reminder of the passion that Sarah had tried to weaponize against me. My love for classic cars, once a source of escape, had become a battleground. Arriving at our house, the one Sarah had tried to take from me, I felt a sense of vindication mixed with sorrow. I chose not to answer Sarah's calls, knowing that any conversation would only reopen wounds that needed time to heal. Instead, I focused on my children, who were confused but would soon understand the necessity of our new reality. I knew Sarah would try to reach out, perhaps through lawyers or mutual friends, but I was prepared. Months later, as life settled into a new normal, I received a letter from Sarah. It was an apology, filled with regret and a plea for forgiveness. I sat with it for days, contemplating my next move. The betrayal was deep, but so was our history. I remembered the good times, the laughter, the shared dreams, and the intimate moments that were now just echoes in the vast emptiness of our broken home. Her words in the letter were sincere, or at least they seemed to be. She spoke of her mistakes, her manipulation, and how she had lost sight of what was truly important: our family. The letter was a stark contrast to the cold, calculating woman I had heard plotting in those recordings. It was as if the Sarah I had fallen in love with was reaching out from the pages, trying to bridge the chasm her actions had created. I read it over and over, each time feeling a tug at my heartstrings. Could I forgive her? Could we ever rebuild what was shattered? The question haunted me. I thought about our children, about the life they deserved. One filled with love and stability, not the shadow of deceit and manipulation. I knew that forgiveness wasn't just about absolving Sarah. It was about healing for all of us. One evening, as I sat in the garage, the familiar scent of oil and metal surrounding me, I made a decision. I would meet with Sarah, not for reconciliation, but for closure. I needed to see her face, to hear her voice, to understand if there was any truth left in her words. The meeting was set at a neutral place, a small cafe where we used to go when we were dating. As I walked in, I saw her sitting there, her once fiery red lipstick now a subdued shade, her eyes reflecting a storm of emotions. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.